Did you hear a bell?
His head's in another time zone.
Yeah, just be sure that your post-op patients are all okay before you take off.
Oh, yes.
Henry, everything is okay.
For years, Gary Berghoff was the beating heart of MASH asterisk, the wide-eyed, lovable Radar O'Reilly, who could hear choppers before anyone else and melt even the toughest soldier's heart with his innocence. Fans adored him, cast members respected him, and his character felt irreplaceable. So when Burghoff suddenly packed up and left the show, viewers were blindsided. What could possibly drive one of the most beloved stars of M*A*S*S*H to walk away from a role that made him a household name? Stay tuned, because what really happened behind the scenes will change how you see Radar forever. Who is the man who gave us Radar O'Reilly? Before Gary Burghoff became the soft-spoken heart of M*A*S*S*H, he was just a kid from Connecticut with big dreams and a few hurdles most people never saw coming. Born in Bristol and raised in the small town of Delavan, Wisconsin, Burghoff didn't have an easy start. He was born with a rare condition called Poland syndrome, which left 3 fingers on his left hand smaller than the rest. But that didn't stop him. In fact, it only fueled him. He learned tap dance, became a skilled drummer, and threw himself into the arts with a kind of quiet determination that would later define his acting career. Before Hollywood ever came calling, Gary cut his teeth performing with a local theater group, the Belfry Players of Williams Bay. It was there, under the glow of small-town stage lights, that he began to discover what he could really do. His talent didn't stay hidden for long. He later trained at HB Studio in New York City, the same place where legends like Robert De Niro and Barbra Streisand sharpened their craft. And in 1967, Gary's big break came when he landed the role of Charlie Brown in the original off-Broadway production of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. With that innocent face and tender voice, he was Charlie Brown, and the critics loved him. But Gary wasn't just an actor, he was a rhythm man. In 1968, he joined a band called The Relatives as a drummer, and guess who the lead singer was? None other than a young Linda Carter, who would later become TV's iconic Wonder Woman. The group had a 3-month gig at the Sahara Hotel in Las Vegas, and for Gary, it was pure magic. Music, laughter, late nights, and friendship. He and Carter stayed close for years. So close, in fact, that when she became a star, she invited him to appear alongside her in a 1978 episode of The New Adventures of Wonder Woman. Then came the role that would change everything. Radar O'Reilly in Robert Altman's MASH asterisk. In the film, Berghoff played Radar as a darker, more sardonic version of the character, a young man hardened by the madness around him. But when MASH asterisk moved to television, Gary reshaped Radar into something softer, more human. With the help of writer Larry Gelbart, he turned the character into a symbol of innocence, the boyish clerk who could sense danger before anyone else, yet still believed in the good in people. It worked. Audiences adored Radar. Berghoff earned 6 Emmy nominations for his role, and in 1977, he finally took home the gold, though he wasn't there to accept it. So Alan Alda picked it up for him. But behind that success, something was shifting. By 1979, after 7 seasons, Gary quietly packed his things and walked away from MASH. Why would the man who was the soul of the 4077th suddenly leave it all behind? The answer wasn't fame or ego. It was something far more personal. And once you find out what really happened, you'll never see Radar O'Reilly the same way again. But before we get to that, it's important to understand the world Gary Berghoff was walking away from, the world of MASH asterisk itself. What was MASH all about? When MASH asterisk hit television screens in 1972, no one could have predicted it would become one of the most influential shows in TV history. What started as a daring experiment, a mix of war, comedy, and heartbreak, quickly turned into a cultural phenomenon. Created by Larry Gelbart and inspired by the 1970 film, itself adapted from Richard Hooker's 1968 novel, MASH, a novel about 3 army doctors, the show took viewers straight into the chaos of the Korean War. Not through the eyes of generals or soldiers on the front lines, but through the doctors and nurses trying to save lives in a mobile Army surgical hospital, the 4077th. From the start, MASH * walked a tightrope. It had to make people laugh while quietly forcing them to think about war, all during a time when the real-life Vietnam War was still raging. CBS aired it as a half-hour sitcom, but anyone who watched it knew it was more than that. It was funny, yes, but it was also brutally honest. Beneath the jokes and hijinks, there was an emotional weight that hit home. The early seasons leaned into the chaos and absurdity of wartime life. The characters were unforgettable. The sharp-tongued yet compassionate Hawkeye Pierce, his mischievous partner in crime trapper John, the uptight Major Houlihan, the bumbling Colonel Blake, and, of course, the sweet radar-eared clerk who tied it all together, Radar O'Reilly. The show's humor was the kind that came from exhaustion, the kind people use when the only other option is breaking down. But MASH * didn't stay the same for long. Behind the scenes, creative shifts were changing its DNA. Co-creators Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds, the comedic heartbeat of the show, both left by the end of Season 5. And when they did, something fundamental shifted. Actor Alan Alda, who played Hawkeye, and producer Burt Metcalf took creative control, and the tone evolved from slapstick comedy to deeply human storytelling. The show began exploring heavier themes such as trauma, loneliness, and the moral cost of war with a level of honesty that most comedies never dared to touch. By the late 1970s, MASH * had grown up. The humor was still there, but it was now wrapped in something rawer. Episodes like Dreams and Point of View experimented with storytelling, offering surreal and deeply personal looks into the minds of the characters. The show no longer just made you laugh, it made you feel. It showed war not through explosions or battles, but through the emotional exhaustion of those who had to keep patching up the wounded day after day. As the years went by, the cast evolved too. McLean Stevenson, Larry Linville, and Gary Berghoff, all known for their comic timing, eventually left, taking some of the show's lightness with them. Trapper John's replacement, B.J. Honeycutt, brought a more grounded energy, while Margaret Houlihan became less of a caricature and more of a layered, empathetic woman. Even Klinger, once known for his outrageous cross-dressing stunts, put away the dresses and stepped into a more serious role. By the early 1980s, the Vietnam War had ended, and the show's focus shifted fully toward the human condition rather than political commentary. Every story, every scene felt like a reflection, not just on war, but on the cost of compassion, the absurdity of bureaucracy, and the fragile humanity holding it all together. After 11 powerful seasons, M*A*S*H finally came to a close in 1983 with the 2.5-hour finale, Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen. It was more than a TV ending. It was a national event. Over 106 million people tuned in, making it the most-watched television broadcast in American history at that time. For over a decade, MASH * proved that television could be both hilarious and heartbreaking, political yet deeply personal. It redefined what storytelling on TV could be, and even now, decades later, its message still hits just as hard. Because MASH * wasn't just about war, it was about people. Flawed, funny, fragile people trying to hold on to their sanity in a world that had lost its own. But while the show portrayed unity and heart on screen, things behind the camera weren't always as peaceful. Beneath the laughter and camaraderie of the 4077th, real-life tensions simmered among some of the cast members, particularly between two of its most beloved faces, the beef between Burghoff and McLean Stevenson. When you watch MASH *, it's easy to believe the cast got along as perfectly off-screen as they did in the 4077th. The chemistry was that good. The banter felt real, the affection believable, and every scene looked like a group of friends just trying to survive the madness together. But behind the laughter and applause, not everything was as harmonious as it seemed. Like any workplace, MASH * had its share of tension, bruised egos, and personality clashes. Only this one just happened to be one of the biggest television shows of the 1970s. From the outside, success looked effortless. The show was a ratings juggernaut, loved by both audiences and critics, But inside the set, the pressure of that success was real. The fame, the creative demands, and the long shooting hours all began to wear down the cast and crew. For some, the stress turned into quiet frustration. For others, it exploded into full-blown conflict. And few relationships captured that push-and-pull dynamic quite like the one between McLean Stevenson and Gary Berghoff. Stevenson, who played the kind-hearted yet bumbling Colonel Henry Blake, was one of the most beloved faces on MASH Asterisk. But as the show evolved, he started to feel overshadowed, particularly by Alan Alda's increasingly central character, Hawkeye Pierce. Stevenson wanted more depth, more screen time, and more recognition. By season 3, that frustration reached its breaking point, and in a shocking twist for fans, Colonel Blake was written off the show and killed in a tragic plane crash that left viewers heartbroken. However, according to Stevenson himself, the decision to leave wasn't just about screen time or storylines. In an interview with the Kingston Whig Standard, he revealed there was another factor that made things tense: his behind-the-scenes relationship with Gary Burghoff, the actor who played his loyal right-hand man, Radar O'Reilly. Stevenson described their relationship as love-hate, admitting that while he admired Berghoff's talent, the two of them sometimes clashed. In his own words, Berghoff was probably the best actor of the six of us, but they occasionally became problems for each other. Stevenson even confessed that ego played its part, his own included. The fame, the praise, and the demanding pace all got to him. And as it turned out, he wasn't the only one struggling behind the scenes. Gary Berghoff, despite his gentle on-screen presence, was reportedly difficult to work with at times. There were stories of tempers flaring, even shouting matches on set. A 1983 biography of Alan Alda claimed that Stevenson and Berghoff once got into a heated argument, and that Wayne Rogers, who played Trapper John, once became so frustrated with Berghoff that he threw a chair in anger. Still, when the cameras rolled, none of that tension showed. On screen, Colonel Blake and Radar shared one of the most genuine relationships in television history. A commander and his clerk who felt more like father and son. Their bond was real, even if the friendship behind it was sometimes tested. But as MASH Asterisk continued to grow, Berghoff began to feel the sting of being underappreciated. Despite being the only actor to appear in both the original M*A*S*S*H film and the TV series, he often found his character used as comic relief, the innocent clerk who was everyone's punchline. And as other cast members, particularly Alan Alda, became more involved in writing and directing episodes, Berghoff's creative input began to fade into the background. He even wrote an episode centered around Radar, one that was never produced. That rejection, small as it might seem, hit him hard. By the time season 7 came around, Gary Berghoff had had enough. Fans were devastated, and so were his castmates. For all the behind-the-scenes friction, no one could deny that Berghoff brought a rare kind of heart to M*A*S*S*H. In the end, both Stevenson and Berghoff left their mark on one of the most beloved TV series ever made. Their performances, full of humor, warmth, and humanity, helped turn MASH Asterisk into television gold. Whatever went down behind closed doors, what they created together was timeless. Because when the lights came on and the cameras rolled, their differences disappeared and all that was left was magic. But while that magic looked effortless to viewers, the truth behind the camera told a very different story. The laughs, the chemistry, the unforgettable moments, all of it came from a set where tension simmered just below the surface. The same emotional depth that made MASH Asterisk so powerful on screen often came from real-life creative clashes and exhaustion off it. Behind-the-scenes tension. When MASH Asterisk first hit TV screens in 1972, it looked like nothing else on television. It was a half-hour war comedy that somehow managed to make you laugh one minute and choke up the next. For 11 unforgettable seasons, it became a cultural touchstone, redefining what television could be. But behind the witty one-liners and heartfelt scenes that played out in the dusty tents of the 4077th, tensions were brewing. There were creative clashes, bruised egos, and fierce battles over what kind of story MASH Asterisk should really tell. Yes, the show was groundbreaking. Yes, it was adored by millions. but off-screen, it was far from peaceful. The drama behind MASH Asterisk could have easily filled another season's worth of episodes, only this time no laugh track would have been needed. The roots of that tension began long before the cameras rolled. The story of MASH Asterisk started with H. Richard Hornberger, a surgeon who had served in a real mobile army surgical hospital during the Korean War. Writing under the pseudonym Richard Hooker, Hornberger published MASH, a novel about three Army doctors asterisk in 1968, drawing from his own experiences. When his book was adapted into Robert Altman's 1970 film, it gained critical acclaim. But when the novel was turned into a TV series, that was when things took a turn. Hornberger became increasingly bitter about how his story had evolved. His beloved character, Benjamin Franklin Hawkeye Pierce, originally written as a kind of heroic alter ego, was in his view twisted into something entirely different. Alan Alda's Hawkeye was still funny and brilliant, but also deeply flawed, morally conflicted, and openly critical of war. That did not sit well with Hornberger, a political conservative who saw his creation becoming, as he put it, a liberal. He complained publicly that the series had trampled on his memories and hated that viewers assumed he was anti-military because of it. Hornberger even tried to take back ownership of his version of Hawkeye with his 1977 follow-up novel, MASH Mania Asterisk, a not-so-subtle attempt to rewrite his own narrative. But by then, the TV version of M*A*S*S*H had already eclipsed everything else. His Hawkeye was gone. The world had fallen in love with Alda's. When MASH Asterisk transitioned from the big screen to television, co-creators Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds were determined to stay true to the grittiness of war, not turn it into a slapstick comedy about military life. They wanted to show the human cost, the heartbreak, and the absurdity of trying to find humor in a place built on pain. But CBS did not exactly see it that way. The network wanted something lighter, a neat, laugh-track-driven show that would not scare off viewers. Gelbart and Reynolds refused. They insisted that MASH Asterisk should feel real, that audiences should see the blood, the loss, and the despair. It was a bold move for television in the 1970s. This creative tug-of-war reached a breaking point early in the series. One CBS executive famously told the producers they had ruined MASH after watching the episode Sometimes You Hear the Bullet, in which Hawkeye loses an old friend on the operating table. It was a gut punch of an episode, one that made viewers cry instead of laugh. But Gelbart stood firm. The show, he insisted, was not meant to make war look entertaining. Eventually, the writers got their way. But by the end of Season 4, both Gelbart and Reynolds walked away, drained from the constant battles with executives and the emotional toll of maintaining that balance between humor and heartbreak. As if creative clashes were not enough, MASH Asterisk faced physical chaos, too. In 1982, disaster struck when a brush fire tore through the show's California set, burning most of it to the ground. The timing was eerie, as the fire happened just before production began on the series finale. But instead of rebuilding from scratch, the producers made the best of it. They used real footage from the blaze in the finale itself, transforming tragedy into art. It was poetic in a way. The destruction of the camp mirrored the end of an era for the 4077th. But the real fires were not just on set. They were between cast members, too. Jamie Farr's Corporal Klinger, for instance, almost did not exist. Originally written as an over-the-top one-episode gag about a man wearing women's clothes to get a Section 8 discharge, the role was supposed to be played as flamboyantly gay. Farr, desperate for work, agreed. But co-creator Gene Reynolds quickly shut that down. Instead, Farr turned Klinger into a straight, desperate dreamer whose outrageous antics were just another survival tactic. The character was a hit, and what started as a one-time appearance grew into a full-time role. Even then, the network had doubts, and Farr constantly had to fight for his place. Not all the tension came from egos. Sometimes it came from heartbreak. When McLean Stevenson decided to leave after Season 3, the writers wanted his exit to mean something. So in the now infamous episode Abyssinia Henry, Colonel Blake gets his honorable discharge and prepares to go home, only for Radar to walk into the operating room and announce that his plane was shot down. The twist shocked America, and that was the point. The showrunners wanted to remind viewers that in war, happy endings were rare. What made the moment so powerful, though, was that none of the cast except Alan Alda knew it was coming. When Gary Berghoff read that final page, he was so upset he offered to skip the scene if Stevenson changed his mind. Stevenson told him no, the story mattered more. The scene was shot in 2 takes, and when it aired, CBS was flooded with angry letters. The network even tried to cut the ending from reruns. But for all the pain it caused, that moment cemented MASH's legacy, a show that dared to tell the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Even the jokes were not free from battle. CBS insisted on a laugh track, the standard for sitcoms at the time, but the creators thought it was ridiculous. How could you laugh over surgery scenes? How could you cue laughter over death? After much back and forth, they reached a compromise. No laugh track in the operating room. It was a small victory, but an important one. The writers also had to outsmart the censors in other ways. They wanted the show to sound authentic, and that meant soldiers talking like soldiers, profanity included. But CBS kept demanding that the swearing be cut in half, so the writers got creative. They simply doubled the amount of profanity in the scripts, knowing half would be removed. It was their quiet act of rebellion, and it worked. By the time MASH * reached its final season, the cast and crew were emotionally spent. 11 years of war stories, real and fictional, had taken their toll. When they filmed Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, they poured everything they had left into it. Ironically, even the finale carried echoes of tension. A fire had destroyed part of the set, and the emotional climax, Hawkeye's breakdown, was inspired by a horrifying true story of a Korean mother forced to smother her baby to save others. It was dark, raw, and unforgettable. When it finally aired in 1983, 106 million people tuned in, the biggest audience in TV history at that time. But once the cameras stopped rolling, the cast held their own private ceremony, burying a real-time capsule filled with props and letters on the Fox lot. Years later, during renovations, someone unknowingly threw it away. A fitting, bittersweet metaphor for a show that constantly balanced humor and heartbreak. MASH * was not just a television series, it was a battlefield of ideas, egos, and emotion. Behind the laughter there were creative wars, quiet resentments, and genuine moments of grief. But maybe that is exactly why it worked. Because just like the surgeons it portrayed, the cast and crew of M*A*S*S*H spent every day stitching together chaos into something that somehow resembled hope. And when the curtain finally fell, they did not just end a show, they closed a chapter of television history that would never be repeated. But even as the dust settled on that remarkable legacy, one question continued to echo among fans. Why did Gary Berghoff, the heart of the 4077th, decide to walk away when MASH * was still at its peak? His departure wasn't just another cast change. It marked a turning point that altered the soul of the series forever. The real reason, Gary Berghoff left MASH. When Gary Berghoff walked away from MASH *, it wasn't just another actor leaving a hit TV show. It was the heart of the show saying goodbye. For 8 seasons, Berghoff's character, Corporal Walter Radar O'Reilly, had been the purest soul in a war zone full of chaos, cynicism, and gallows humor. He was the one who could sense helicopters before anyone else, the boyish clerk with the teddy bear, the gentle heartbeat that reminded everyone, including the audience, that humanity could still exist in hell. So when Radar said his final goodbye in Season 8, fans felt it deeply. It wasn't just the end of a character, it was the end of innocence on MASH *. But as emotional as Radar's departure was on screen, the real story behind Gary Berghoff's exit was far more complicated and painfully human. To understand the tension that led to his decision, you have to look at what MASH * had become by the late 1970s. The show was still wildly popular, yes, but it was changing quickly. Many of the original cast members were gone. The tone had shifted from biting satire to something heavier, more reflective. And in the middle of it all was Berghoff, a man who had lived as Radar for a full decade, first in Robert Altman's 1970 film, and then for 8 years on the series. Playing the same character for that long would wear on anyone. But for Berghoff, the strain went much deeper than creative fatigue. By 1979, Berghoff was burnt out. He was exhausted from the grind of filming, frustrated by the direction the show had taken, and quietly battling personal struggles that few people on set understood. Director Charles S. Dubin later revealed that Berghoff felt underappreciated, that despite being one of the original faces of MASH*, he wasn't getting the recognition he deserved. That feeling of invisibility aided him, especially as other cast members like Alan Alda became the creative powerhouses of the series. Berghoff, who had once been the emotional glue of the show, now felt like a supporting piece in someone else's story. At the same time, his personal life was crumbling. His marriage to Janet Gale was falling apart, and the tension followed him to set. Dubin recalled moments during the filming of Radar's farewell episodes where Berghoff broke down in tears, not as part of the script, but from sheer emotional overload. In one scene, where Radar talks about a future with a woman he loves, reality and fiction collided. The pain of his own failing relationship hit too close to home, and Berghoff had to be walked around the Fox backlot to calm down before shooting could continue. Behind the scenes, the weight of it all, the pressure, the fame, the emotional exhaustion became unbearable. Berghoff once admitted that he struggled with how the world saw him. To fans, he was Radar, the shy, innocent, loyal clerk with the big heart. But to Gary, that identity started to feel like a cage. "If the only identity we have is what we do," he once said, "then we're in big trouble, especially if we lose a job. Then we don't have an identity anymore." It's a haunting statement, one that reveals how fame, even the kind born from a beloved character, can quietly dismantle a person's sense of self. Still, when the time came to film Goodbye Radar, Berghoff gave it everything he had. The two-part episode was tender, nostalgic, and devastating. Radar's farewell wasn't just about leaving the army, it was about growing up, about realizing that the innocence that once defined him couldn't survive forever. When he walked away from the camp, leaving behind his teddy bear, a symbol of boyhood and vulnerability, it felt like the end of an era. Hawkeye later finds the bear, and for a brief, wordless moment, every viewer watching knew that M*A*S*H would never be the same again. Behind that moving farewell, though, was a cast that understood just how heavy the moment was. By then, MASH* had already seen multiple major exits: McLean Stevenson's Colonel Blake, Wayne Rogers' Trapper John, and Larry Linville's Frank Burns. But Berghoff's departure hit differently. Radar wasn't just another comic relief character, he was the moral compass of the show, the one untouched by the cynicism that had swallowed everyone else. Losing him stripped the series of its emotional innocence. And yet there was an unspoken understanding among the cast. Gary needed to go. The joy that had once fueled him was gone. The man who had made the world laugh and cry as Radar was now battling his own burnout and heartbreak. Staying would have only deepened the cracks. After leaving MASH*, Berghoff stepped away from the spotlight. He focused on family and appeared in only a handful of projects afterward. He reprised Radar briefly in the After MASH* spin-off, which found his character adjusting to civilian life on his family farm in Iowa, a fitting echo of his own attempt to find peace away from Hollywood. In 1984, CBS even tried to give him his own show, Walter, where Radar becomes a police officer trying to help others as he once did at the 4077th. The pilot aired, but the series never went forward, and maybe that was for the best. Some characters, after all, only belong in one story. The beauty of Radar and of Gary's performance was how real it felt. He wasn't flashy or loud. He didn't need the spotlight. His presence was quiet but powerful, like a heartbeat under chaos. He represented something MASH* itself struggled to hold on to: compassion. When he left, the show kept going, but something intangible went with him: the spark of sweetness, that wide-eyed innocence that made the audience believe that even in war, kindness could survive. Looking back, it's hard not to feel for Berghoff. The man who brought warmth to millions was fighting his own private battles, trying to hold together his personal life while living under the weight of fame. He was Radar to the world, but to himself he was just Gary, a man searching for balance, for peace, for a sense of self outside of the role that had defined him. In the end, his decision to walk away wasn't about ego or ambition. It was about survival. He chose family over fame and peace over pressure. And in doing so, he gave fans one of the most emotionally resonant farewells in television history. What MASH * episode is your favorite to this very day? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.